Welcome to Blacklace and Bones,
where we talk about everything that's spooky, kooky, and a little bit creepy,
with a mix of cutesy.
Today we are going to talk about the mythical creatures and folklore specifically to the UK.
Because we only know more or less more American ones, so it's our time to shine.
Oh yes. It's quite interesting though, because during the research we found out quite a few interesting things.
There is a lot of like mythical creatures that are based off of British folklore, and especially since like ours date back to Celtics, Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, especially when everyone just came over to us. It's actually quite interesting to see.
Yes. So the way we're going to do this is that we are going to talk about each individual part of the UK. So obviously you got the Scots,
Love them.
you got the Irish, you got the Welsh, and then obviously the English. Now obviously a lot of these, because of how kind of connected the UK was back in the day, a lot of these do kind of mix into different territories. And just a heads up, there are going to be some pronunciations that we are probably going to suck at.
Especially, no offence to the Welsh, but the Welsh have their own language as well, where we obviously speak English, so it's very confusing to us sometimes when we will mispronounce something. We do apologise, Welsh people, and we do apologise to Irish as well, because sometimes Irish can also become Gaelic as well as Scots. Yeah. So we do apologise. We are trying our best.
We are trying, but Google Translate is not the most reliable source on the planet.
Yeah, especially with Welsh, surprisingly.
Oh yeah. So to kick us off, we are going to be starting in the Scottish Highlands.
Ooh.
With the Selkies. Now, Selkies are from the Scottish folklore as early as, obviously, the Celtics. Now, they are a type of shapeshifter that on land, they are just normal human people. So, your neighbour or one of your village people back then.
Yeah.
It was kind of really hard to spot. But as soon as they put on their skin, skin, they became seals in the sea.
Gotta love that. I would love to be a seal.
I'm not going to be able to look at seals the same way ever again.
No.
Now, the interesting part is that in very early folklore, they were not gentle creatures. However, more commonly, they are now calm and gentle. It is to be believed that more recently, they have come up to land every 7 years for a brief amount of time before returning to the sea.
Oh, imagine going to the sea every 7 years. Love that.
Me personally, it just reminds me of the curse in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, 100%.
Can't touch land for every 7 years, so that's kind of actually interesting.
But which one would you prefer? Being cursed to not do it, or you have the choice to go to sea for 7 years?
Probably obviously have the choice.
Yeah.
But yes, however, if they do not have their skin, they cannot transform back into their seal form. Which, this is where human men come in. A lot of men did this to the female Selkies. They would deliberately hide their skin so that they could not transform back and go back to sea, so that they would force the female Selkies into marriage and bearing offspring.
Which is quite upsetting. And it's usual English it is English history that women were forced to marry into noblemen and everything else, so it's quite sad.
Yeah, but the more interesting thing, which we're going to move on to, is that the male Selkies are actually the opposite. While obviously they are well-meaning creatures that have a sense of family responsibility to their human mates and offspring. They felt like a sense of reliability, even felt affection towards their human mates and obviously their children that they had bore throughout the time. Obviously, we don't know the exact origin of Selkies as to how the story first began. But there is like many different theories to do with the Selkies in like the supernatural sense. There are reincarnations of people who were lost souls that drowned at sea, which is quite comforting.
It's very comforting. I mean, instead of imagine your family as a drowned soul, they come back every 7 years instead.
Yeah, I think that is quite a comforting idea. But like the more realistic theory is that they were inspired by real people who wore like the really heavy furs like they used to back in the time.
It most likely would be obviously Vikings, because Vikings used to have big pelts from their kills and hunts as a way to like show off to women, ironically.
But yeah, that pretty much sums up the Selkie.
So now we're going to move more to the left side of the UK, to the Irish, which obviously I have a personal heritage to, so it's quite nice. But unfortunately, this one's quite common, known, and it's in a lot of media, which is obviously the Banshee. Yay! Love the Banshee. Banshees are obviously from Irish folklore, and they are either like an Irish fairy or a spirit whose scream is believed to be the warning of death. In English folklore, a lot of things are fairies or pixies, which is kind of the opposite of what Tinkerbell is.
I know, that's like the funniest thing. Like in media, when you hear fairy, you picture very, very tiny woman, wings, and a lot of dust and glitter.
Yeah, English folklore is completely different. They're more like little things, like they almost look like Cornish pixies from Harry Potter. Like they're evil little things, not always blue, but obviously Cornish pixies are actually also part of English folklore. But that's another thing.
Yeah, but it's the fact that fairies take on all different forms. It is like they take on forms of like hobgoblins, they take on forms of even hounds, which we will get to later.
Yes.
But yeah, fairies in UK history is not what you picture compared to what is portrayed in the media.
This is also where we come back to like the fairy circles and also like the portal as well, where like the trees are like connected and it looks like you're going through the fairy portal, like fairy realm. It's a lot, but that's for another episode. So we're going to continue on with the Banshee. Traditionally, the Banshee is depicted as the usual pale white woman dressed in white hair, beautiful woman. And she's usually floating, her hair's usually floating upwards because obviously she's like, it's almost like she's in a picture screen. Like you could see her scream and everything else. But she can also appear with either red or hair, which is very common for Irish people. If you go to Ireland, a lot of people are redheaded.
And what are you looking at me?
But the other thing is, however, there is another way that they normally can be seen, which is where they can appear as a hag, old woman, usual, but she also dresses like in black with a veil, which you were saying when we were doing research.
Reminds me a lot of The Woman in Black, which is obviously a very popular tale in the UK, which obviously you can see in movie or in theatre. But obviously in The Woman in Black, she's depicted as like a lost soul, a woman who has died and has come back very vengeful. But then the description of a banshee is extremely similar, and obviously The Woman in Black, when she screeches, somebody is going to die. So I'm kind of questioning the theory there.
Yes, and we don't exactly know how banshees are technically made. They're just women that are either mourning or something like that. So she could be that she's so filled with hatred and mourning that she did become a banshee in a way.
Maybe.
But there's a more frightening one. She can also appear headless with a bowl of blood, which I don't understand how that works, but I guess it's if she screams somehow.
I'm assuming from this general vicinity somewhere.
Yeah, I have no clue how she would scream, but apparently she does. And she's also, like, the story of the Banshee is believed to be coming from the traditional Irish custom of a lamlet, where they would, in the 8th century, they would have women that would sing a sorrowful song during a funeral, which could be loud enough so the whole village, because villages in the UK are quite small, where they can hear the song, and that is how they knew someone in the village had passed, which is insane to think about, especially when, like, the story of, like, when a woman has a baby, it takes a whole village, because it used to.
Yeah.
It used to be that a village would take help with this woman and with the baby, and to think that could have been your friend, that could have been anything in that village.
Yeah, so it's like it was a very big like call to everyone that someone had passed. But it's kind of interesting to see something like that potentially develop into a tale of it becoming a warning. Yeah,
because then eventually, unfortunately and luckily, a banshee doesn't actually hurt anyone. She just is there to warn you, which I kind of find quite comforting. But there is sometimes in some stories that say that a direct look at a banshee while she's in mid-scream can also cause sudden death to the person that sees them. So whether or not she's screaming because she's warning them that she's about to look, they're about to look at her, we don't know. But
there's way too much to cover.
There's way too much to cover about the banshee. It's been going on for centuries, even like over centuries. I can't remember the word for over centuries. 1,000 years,
millennia.
More. That's it.
I
don't know. But they're definitely a well-known one from English folklore.
Yeah. So from there, we are going to move to the Welsh, and once again, as at the start of the video, I'm going to reiterate that I cannot speak Welsh, and my pronunciation is probably going to be absolutely shocking.
I tried to write it down in a way that we could pronounce it, but bear in mind the pronunciation is turn American as well. So
we're set up for failure here.
Yeah, we're set up for failure.
So we do apologise in advance. But yes, so with Welsh folklore, we're going on to what I'm going to try and pronounce as the Cuan, or something like that.
Kuanu, I think it is.
Kuanu?
I don't know.
But basically, they are also sometimes known as the Hounds of Hell.
An easier way of saying it.
We will just stick to the Welsh Hounds of Hell at this point.
Yes.
They are also classed as, once again, fairies, or fairy hounds, whatever you want to look at it. So, when we were saying earlier that fairies take on pretty much nearly any form in UK folklore, we're not kidding.
We are not. It is hard to find a normal fairy.
Basically. They are depicted in many, many ways. One of the first forms is they can be depicted as being white as snow, with ears that are rose-coloured inside, and eyes as bright as moonbeams.
That sounds danger puppy. Danger puppy, wanna cuddle?
This is why we're not gonna live till we're 30.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, it also kind of reminds me of maybe like a Patronus from Harry Potter.
Yeah,
like very
one.
bright. But there are other descriptions. Sometimes they were small and reddish brown coloured, either spotted or spangled with red and white, or they were entirely flame coloured.
Which, when I was researching, I have no clue what that meant, but I'm assuming either like mixes with red, orange, yellows.
I just pictured like a full-on ombre effect.
Yeah.
But it can get worse. The more sinister kind was bald with huge red spots or red in body with black patches. However, it still gets worse. The worst ones were blood red in colour and dripping with gore, with eyes like balls of liquid fire. Which
sounds more like hounds that come from hell.
Yeah.
I mean, fire, you're gonna have burnt skin.
Yeah, but considering that these are theory to be a type of fairy, to be completely kind of like covered in gore with like flames for eyeballs makes me kind of wonder about the whole fairy logic we got kind of going on here.
Yeah, we have no logic with fairies in
Absolutely
the UK.
not. But it gets even more interesting. The Hound of Hell were a part of the Wild Hunt. And the hunt within itself was said that the men doomed to ride with them came back to suck the blood of the corpses and the living. Now, what kind of creature does that sound like?
I have no clue.
Pointy little teeth?
Pointy little teeth and maybe some red eyes, depending on the franchise you're in, or depending on what people look at.
You can see where we're going with this. So yes, obviously men would come back as something else, doomed to feed off of the blood of either the dead or the living. So that kind of just depended. The hounds themselves were obviously, if we hadn't guessed this by like already, are associated with death. And the supernatural being both white and red, but also like the avengers of wrongdoing.
Which I am glad, because thank God for that.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes sense because hellhounds, like, yes, okay, everyone associates hell with like bad and whatnot, which okay, but at the end of the day, hell is specifically to punish the bad.
Yeah.
So hellhounds, I don't think in themselves are bad. I think they are literally there to do a job, which is to drag the souls of wrongdoers to hell.
I don't know what the type of wrongdoer sin kind of level it is at for this, because obviously Welsh, like we're going to continue with this, but Welsh also have their own underworld. We don't know exactly, so we don't know what the level of sin is for that, and it's like the same as like, unless it's like Greek mythology where they only have underworld and that's it, they don't go any further, they don't go any higher, whatnot.
Pretty much, I don't know, but obviously the Welsh had their kind of own underworld law, and the ruler of the Welsh underworld was said to hunt down wrongdoers and not the innocent. Once again, supporting my theory that obviously no one wants to end up in hell, but hell is specifically just there to punish people who deserve to be there.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of goes against my point there. But going back to them, obviously, the Hounds of Hell, their appearance can be an omen of death, like many creatures in the UK folklore, and while they sometimes do travel in a pack, alone they are usually seen with their master, or, more interesting, their mistress.
Which is actually surprised to have actually a male and a female owner. Which is very rare in like a lot of folklore.
Especially early on folklore as well.
Yeah, this is like early.
Yeah, but that's kind of all we have for our Welsh segment on this episode. So we're going to give it back to you.
So we're moving back more to the right, and we're going to straight to England, where, praise the Lord, we're from. But this is more northern England, this folklore. We couldn't find many for actual England as much. Most of it's more fairy-like stuff, and
as I said, obviously, because of how far back it goes, before the UK was kind of developed into its separate parts, obviously a lot of these folklores ended up being integrated kind of into each other, like a kind of web of networks, I suppose.
Yeah, there is like a couple of things that are Scottish folklore mixed with English, some is Irish, English, Welsh. It, like, because of how close obviously the countries are to each other, it kind of just happens. And sometimes we even get like the mix of Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and obviously them two are separate countries.
Yeah.
But sometimes it does get mixed in. So, anyway, back to our North England. Once again, I do apologise. Different accents, different ways of saying things. Once again, do apologise. So we're going to talk about the Black Annis. And she is said to be an evil witch or a hag a lot of common things. It's usually a hag or a witch in the UK as well. And she usually takes the skin of a like blue, and she has iron claws, sharp as like talons, which I do not want to be choked out by that.
I'd like to have a pair of those myself, though.
Yep,
for certain.
Love them. Who also lives in the cave? Who lives in a cave in the Dane Hills, which is now. I found this out today actually. The cave has now been filled in.
Really?
That cave has been filled in. So if I continue on, this is like, it's insane how much like it has been like changed. But this is marked by an old oak tree outside, which we'll come back to that one because there's more insane things about this. But she was used more as like a boogeyman situation to keep kids behaving, which is also a common thing about folklore.
Which really, I don't get. It's always to keep the children in line, which when you look at how British history turned out, I don't think it was the kids that needed the horror stories.
Yeah, no, it didn't work out really well.
No.
Cool. Sorry guys. But she was actually, the legend states that she would leave her home on winter nights, also sometimes Easter. I don't know exactly. It kind of, like, my research keeps getting mixed up. But from the research I did, apparently she was meant to go on winter nights and Easter. She goes to look for livestock and children to eat. She would be then hiding in her branches of her oak tree, hunting whoever came past the oak tree. However, if no one went under, she would then go into the village and she would reach through the windows to grab the children from their sleep, drag them through the window all the way back to their cave. She would then skin them, eat them, and then tan their skin, and then either wear their skin as like a pelt, or hang it from said oak tree.
Which is just... believe it or not, it's not our most intense story from the UK.
No, it's not.
However, you did find something interesting about this one and how it's actually impacted architecture.
Yeah, so because of this, they ended up building cottages. So what houses used to be. They used to build cottages with smaller windows so that only an arm could get through and you couldn't pull like something out. So it'd only just be an arm to fit through.
So basically, like, the folklore had become so popular, it had ended up like being a detrimental effect on architecture to prevent the snatching of children.
It's so insane, and like especially with almost all English houses, like old English houses, look like they have smaller windows as well, and higher up, so you'd need a stepping stool to open the windows.
Yeah.
And it's so insane to think about, like how one legend spread around the whole of England, kind of thing.
Yeah.
To then change architecture of houses and structures.
Yeah, no, it is really insane. But obviously back then, superstition was like the main powerhouse of the logical thinking.
Oh yeah.
So like it did lead to a lot of people doing some really crazy things to try and prevent the supernatural.
Yeah, well, that's another story we'll get into in another episode, because it is insane what the dark history we have. And it is dark. It's not, just for a little bit of pixie dust. Oh no.
Oh, no.
No.
I'm pretty certain this isle has been built on like blood and fire, pretty much.
Oh, 100%. But it was also said that she would also be heard, like she could gnash teeth, and like howls would be heard from miles away. So then they would also bar their windows and doors to make sure she doesn't come in.
That is.
So it is insane how much all it takes is one person saying they saw something, and this almost mass hysteria happens.
Yeah. But that happens with a lot of things, like a lot of like obviously like the English witch trials and stuff like that, which is for another time.
That is another time.
But basically, back in those times in the UK, if you said you saw something, it could be wacky as hell, and somehow people seem to always believe you.
And somehow always a fairy. It's either a fae or a fairy.
Yeah, but obviously these are just 4 of like the more, I would say, common examples. There are hundreds of different folklore creatures that reside within the UK folklore as a whole, so we are probably going to think about doing more than one part to this.
And don't think that we forgot about Nessie, because Nessie is obviously the more known one out of the UK.
But there's a lot of surprising unknown tales that still do exist today about quite some strange and interesting creatures.
Yeah, and sometimes also things that the media has based off of us.
Yeah, go to the UK, that's a win.
Woohoo! Go on, UK!
But we will probably go on to do more parts exploring more creatures of the UK folklore. So if that is something that does interest you, then obviously give us a follow. Our episodes, as always, will be up on Spotify, podcast, YouTube, and TikTok.
Yes.
So,
and we also have obviously Instagram and also TikTok as well, and Facebook.
yes.
So please do check us out, because we will be trying to post as regularly as possible.
So obviously if that is something that interests you, then obviously you know what we're going to ask.
Please join us, spooky little family.
Yes, please subscribe, follow, or whatever the platform you are on is telling you to do, as that will just help you stay updated with all the things that we are learning about our country. All dark and creepy, of course.
Also, give us a comment on what, like, if you're from the UK, give us some of your mythical creatures and legends as well, because we would like to add them.
Yeah, if you have a favourite, we may just feature it in the next one.
Exactly.
But until then,
take it easy, guys.
we'll catch you again next week with a new episode.
See you later, guys.
Ciao.